G'day, I'm Trent Maxwell.
And I'm Lee Mason.
I welcome you to our Live, Learn, Survive podcast. Since 2018, Lee and I traveled the globe and met face-to-face with over 33,000 children in 6 countries across 3 continents. We created a series of award-winning children's books, a global online education program, and are founders of the Live, Learn, Survive charity, all focused on teaching children and young adults life skills that will not only help themselves but help others too. We're on a mission to spread awareness about fire, water, and first aid education to inspire the next generation of first responders. So join us for the next half an hour with some fun, inspiration, and kindness, and we'll try and learn something too. How are you this week, Lee? Welcome aboard.
Maxie, I am great. How are you, my friend?
Good. We've got another special guest this week.
One of our favourite days, Maxie. We love it when we've got a guest to talk to, and I'm feeling a little bit, this is a very important person, I'm feeling a little bit nervous, Maxie, at even reading the bio. So yeah, but I am so excited for this chat. It's going to be amazing and help people. So yeah, absolutely. Great day.
It's probably one of our most distinguished guests that we've had.
Absolutely, up there with Professor Greg White.
Yes,
their competition for the the number one spot. So shall I get into the bio and introduce this incredible man?
Yes, of course. Let's do it.
Okay, so Maxie, today we are joined by Mr. Allan Sparks, CV, OAM, VA, and FRSN. So Allan is one of Australia's most highly decorated citizens, being one of only 5 Australians in the past 49 years to receive Australia's highest bravery decoration, which is the Cross of Valour. Allan was awarded the Cross of Valour in 1998 for saving the life of a small boy trapped in a flooded stormwater pipe in Coffs Harbour. In 2016, for another life-saving rescue, Allan was awarded Australia's 4th highest bravery decoration, the Commendation for Brave Conduct, for his rescue of an aboriginal man from the path of an incoming train at Redfern railway station. In 2017, Allan was awarded the Medal of the Order of Australia for service to mental health support organisations and the community. He is the recipient of the New South Wales Police Commissioners of Valour Award and the Royal Humane Society of New South Wales Galleghan Award. He's one of only 10 Australians to receive the Queen's Diamond Jubilee Medal, the Queen's Platinum Jubilee Medal, and will receive the King's Coronation Medal. In September 2022, Allan was invited by St James Palace to attend the funeral of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, where he took part in the Chivalry and Gallantry Procession during the funeral proceedings. Allan is a 20-year veteran of the New South Wales Police Force and of recent times a Deputy Commissioner of the Mental Health Commission of New South Wales. He's a qualified trainer of the Mental Health Commission of Canada, mental health programs, the Working Mind and the Working Mind for First Responders, one of the founding partners of the mental health training program, Operational Readiness for First Responders, the foundation patron of the Thomas Kelly Youth Foundation, a fellow of the Royal Society of New South Wales, chairman of the National Police Bravery Award Committee, a member of the Mental Health Commission Suicide Prevention Advisory Panel, member of the New South Wales Police Mental Health Intervention Team, and a member of the McKillop Foundation National Advisory Committee. Patron of the Heart to Heart Foundation, patron of the Police Over 35s rugby team, and as well as all of that, he's an Australian Day ambassador and an ambassador for Cookinborough Kids. He's the former non-exec director of the Gidget Foundation and a former ambassador of Beyond Blue and Soldier On. As if that wasn't enough, he's an international yachtman who sailed his own yacht from England to Australia in 2009-2010 and is the author of The Cost of Bravery. So welcome, Allan. We are absolutely thrilled to have you here and really appreciate you sparing some time for us. So what I'll do, I'll jump in then straight away with question 1. Allan, how long have you been speaking to groups about mental health? And tell us about operational readiness.
My first foray into professional speaking, Lee, was in 2011. I came to Sydney to speak at a conference, and that was my first time sort of in a professional role in that sense. And I'd been a lecturer at the Detectives Training Course for some time in my police career. I've been a rugby coach, so I was used to being in front of people and speaking to people, but the first time of being in front of a room in a professional sense, that was a whole new experience and one that I really enjoyed. And whilst I touched on my lived experience of mental ill health, I also spoke about some other things that had happened in my life. And then I was a volunteer for Beyond Blue, and then after my book was published in 2013, I became an ambassador for Beyond Blue. So that's when I started to talk about my lived experience of mental ill health in a very clear, distinct way. And the key message that I think I gave was that I gave people hope that you could actually recover from mental ill health and mental illness. And that sort of developed along the way up until I sort of started doing specific programs such as the Operational Readiness Program. And I delivered a sort of a version of that to police forces, first responders around Australia, and also internationally. And I was really, really proud of the information that I was giving because it was all about prevention and proactivity based on my own lived experiences and a bit of science. And then the Operational Readiness Program itself, where I was fortunate, Maxi and the lifeguards, that started in 2019. I'd given a couple of Beyond Blue talks to the lifeguards, and then Hoppo came to me and said, "Sparksy, can you develop a training program?" So I spoke to a good friend of mine and a colleague, Dr. David Said, who's an eminent clinical psychologist, and Dave and I put the program together. And then, fortunately, Waverley Council picked it up, and we started this phased program where we educated people about why they can become chronically stressed or impacted by their workplace and what they can do to build resilience and endurance and cope with the adversities that they face in their careers. So we started with Waverley Council, and we've been training Maxi and the guys there for the last 5 years. We also now do Randwick Council, Wagga Council, and then a modified version of that, I now am running a pilot program for New South Wales Police across the state. So that's where I think I've really found my even at my age, I've found my true calling, I think, helping people understand the why. Yeah, which has been just.
I do love the chats that you and David do. All of us lifeguards, we're pretty close as it is, with the busy summers we have. But when we have induction, you guys chat, it just brings everyone together, and we always get a lot of stuff off our chest. So I'm very fortunate over the years to have worked with you guys. So yeah, it's great what you guys do.
Isn't it incredible about how things come along at a time when you're not looking, things just evolve and happen, and like you say, you found what you believe is, your calling, which is it's just incredible. It fascinates me how things like that happen.
It's an old cliche. It's meant to be. Yeah. It's truly meant to be.
Yeah,
truly, absolutely.
Mates, next question. How did your time in the New South Wales Police Force shape you personally and professionally?
I absolutely loved my time in the cops, except for the last part of the course. That wasn't too pleasant. But being a cop was something that I joined up when I was 19 years of age. I left the shearing sheds in the Central West. I came to Sydney. I was so green. I was so raw. And it exposed me to certainly the highs and lows of life, not only for me personally, but also professionally. And also it exposed me to all the highs and lows in people's lives. The things, as you know, Maxi, from your time as a lifeguard, you become exposed to so many different experiences, and they have an impact on you, some positive, some negative. But ultimately, it taught me a lot about life, the fragility of life, how life can be whisked away in a heartbeat, and how important it is to value life and have your values and your moral integrity, and all those things were critically important. So I think for me, for my personality, that being a police officer helped me understand myself and helped me utilise my values that I feel very, very strongly about. And I'm really, really proud of my time in the cops. It shattered me when I lost my career, and it took me many, many years to try and find myself again. But But ultimately, I believe that the person I am today is because of my time in the Cops.
Yeah, that's
Wow.
awesome, mate. And I could say,
That's incredible.
with the lifeguarding stories, but also with fire and rescue, some stories stick with you, some don't. The longer you're in there, unfortunately, I'm coming up to 9 years in January, and Lee would know the start of this year or through this year, there's been some big jobs, and some affect you more than others, but it's how you deal with it. How I deal with it, and which one of your questions soon we're going to be talking about, but how I deal with the stress is a lot of exercise and talking about it. I look forward to hearing how you do it once we get to that question later in the chat. So over to you, Lee.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I mentioned this in the intro, and I've read the story. I've been doing some research on online, Allan. The rescue in 1990, I'm not sure, was it 1996 or 1998 that led you to receiving the Cross of Valour?
1996, Lee.
It was 1996. So that led you to receiving the Cross of Valour.
Yeah, that is certainly a day that I will never ever forget. I don't want to forget it. It's such a good story. I'm still in touch with that young man now. He was a young boy. He was only 11 at the time, but I'm still in touch with him every day. Every day, he gets up before sunrise every morning and takes a photo of the sunrise and puts it on social media. And either I just like it or make a little comment. So. And Deb and I went to his wedding a few years ago. So it's been an extraordinary connection, and it goes very deep. And we don't have the time today to talk about how deep it does go, but it blows your mind how life and interactions can take place. But I remember the day vividly. We'd had 5 days of torrential rain at Coffs Harbour, a big east coast low, and I did a job in the morning with my workmate, Gav Dengate, and we executed a search warrant, recovered some jewellery from a dear old lady who'd had it stolen from a nursing home, and we got that back to her. And we're just back in the meal room having a cup of tea. Life was great. We'd done a good job, feeling really good about ourselves. And a call came over the radio. I'm not sure what your call is, Maxie, but when there's an urgent job for the cops, you hear 2 distinct beeps over the radio. And we heard those. Call came, any car to assist child swept into a storm water pipe. And normally that would be a job that the general duties, the uniform guys would be first on scene, but we were there. We just threw our teacups in the sink and jumped in the car and raced down to an industrial part of Coffs Harbour. There were 2 little boys there shivering and shaking in the freezing cold, and a workman was there with them. And they were very visibly distressed. And we said, "Oh, what's happened?" They said, Jai just disappeared, and we said, "Where?" And they pointed to this whirlpool in the floodwaters. And I said, "What do you mean?" They said, "Oh, he just knocked off his boogie board and got sucked down into there." And I'm going, "Oh my God!" And I just didn't know what to do at that time, to be honest. And then the workman said, "Oh, look, if we pull the covers off the over the road, you can see down into the pipe." So Gav and I, we threw our guns and handcuffs in the car, and we jumped down into this pit, and we could see down into the pipe. The floodwaters were backing up behind us, but we could see down. We thought we could see the little boy's body way off into the pipe. And the pipe is, just to put into context, it's about the diameter of a hula hoop. It's not all that big, but I think the decision, pretty much unspoken between Gav and I, was like, we've got to get this kid out, because if he's dead, we might be able to revive him. If he's alive, we've got to get him out before he gets swept away, and we'll never see him again. So Gav said, "Look, I'll go." I said, "No, that's all right, mate. I was a senior man." I said, "No, I'll do it." So one of the workmen, he sort of produced this rope, which in hindsight was more like a piece of string, and I didn't know anything about bow lines and any of that sort of stuff. I tied this knot around my waist, and I said to Gav, "You let me go down the pipe. I'll get hold of him, and then I'll give it 3 tugs as a signal to haul us back." He said, "Yep, good, great idea." So I sort of laid down in the pipe, and the water just started to wash me like a leaf down the pipe. And I looked at the rope and I realised I could feel the pressure that this thing's going to snap. So I frantically tugged on the rope and Gav pulled me back. And by that stage, the SES had arrived, other police had arrived, and I thought, you beauty, the professionals here, they can take over and I'll get out of this mess. And they just put a bigger rope around my waist and sent me back down the pipe again. So I then lay on my back and was just washed down this pipe. It was estimated I went down about 80 metres down the pipe. And then in my torchlight, what we thought was a kid's body just turned out to be some debris that had been trapped and was giving these weird shadows. So at that point, I started to pull on the rope. They stopped letting the rope go, so I came to a sudden stop in the drain, but then I damned myself in. So I was in a really precarious position, and the pipe started to fill up very, very quickly because of my body displacement, the shape of the pipe. And I then really started to become terrified that I was going to drown. And I started to think, I hope the guy from the SES knows how to tie a knot properly, because if this thing comes apart, I am dead. But then it was a case of having to get back up the pipe. So because I was so engulfed in water, I felt as though I was starting to drown, and they were pulling me back under the water. And I'd arch my back and sort of create a little air pocket, just suck a little bit of air, get under the water again, and they pull me back. But what I didn't realise, it was Gavin who got into the pipe himself, who saw this water starting to rise and realised that I was trapped. So I always say, I owe my life to Gavin, because if he hadn't had the guts to get in the pipe, he wouldn't have seen what was going on, and I would have definitely drowned in there. So we got back to the surface eventually, and then I thought, there's no way that this kid can be alive. And I was saying to the other police, we need to get a map to find where we can access a pipe to try and find his body. It was just going to be a body retrieval. I didn't believe there's any hope. And then suddenly a call came over the radio to say they can hear a child screaming down at the highway. And I thought, well, it's got to be him. So we just jumped in the cars and we raced down to the highway, which was all blocked off. And there were just people everywhere and cars. And we jumped out of the car. And I remember seeing Michael Murray, paramedic. He was laying down on the road with his head down a manhole. And I thought, bloody hell, that's weird. And as soon as I got out of the car, I could hear the screams of this child above all the noise of the people there and everything else. These screams were just so piercing. And Gav and I raced over and we looked down, the water was bubbling up in the manhole, but the screams of a child were coming out through the water. And it was the most bizarre thing. My brain was, it couldn't process, how can somebody be alive but under the water? I mean, this doesn't make sense. But so I was thinking, oh, God, what are we going to do? And then somebody produced a ladder, and I don't know why, but I took my suit pants off, and I'm there in my flash boxer shorts. And I remember saying, Gavin, he disappeared down the ladder and disappeared under the water. And I remember saying to somebody, I need a scuba tank and some regulators. I thought, if we're going underwater, that's what I need. So I followed Gav down under the water. It was like you couldn't see anything. And I just remember sort of swimming around, feeling around. And then suddenly I've come up into the junction of this 6 stormwater pipes, and Gav's in the pipe there, and he's sort of looking around. I think we had a torch there. I can't remember clearly. No, we didn't. We didn't have a torch then, that's right, because it's pitch black, and the water is just pouring in on top of us, and the water is roaring, and it's freezing cold and pitch black, and then the screams of this kid are just reverberating round and round in this pit where we were. It was the most terrifying thing, because these screams of this child who was dying basically were just horrific. But then we just started crawling up pipes, trying to think, which one is he up, which one is he up. And one of the pipes I went up, I thought, I can just hear him a little bit clearer. This has got to be the pipe. And we were very conscious that if we got another downpour of rain, the whole thing fills up and everyone dies. So I remember not panicking, but going, we've got to do this right now. We haven't got time to muck around. We've got to do it. So I said to Gav, look, go back up to the surface, try and find a way into this pipe. This has got to be the one. And I really regret saying that in many ways, because I really would have loved Gav to have been there for the ultimate moment where we got him, but you do it the best you do. And then Michael Mother, paramedic, he came down, and I think Michael brought a torch with him, and he made me tie the rope back around myself, and then I started to crawl on my fingernails and toenails, pretty much laying on my tummy, but like leopard crawling up this pipe, because I couldn't get a grip on anything, and the water's coming against me, trying to push me back. And the kids screaming and the paramedics screaming, have you got him yet? You got him yet? And I'm trying to tell the kid to shut up. I'm trying to tell Michael to shut up. And I really started to think, I'm not going to get there. I was becoming physically exhausted, just trying to claw my way to this kid and push the torch in front of me. And then I flashed my torch up and I saw this little face. And I say it every time, it was like a face of a little ghost, just a little boy's face. And that's all I saw. And he's just screaming and crying. And I don't think he had any idea what was happening, because his vision impaired and his glasses got washed off when he got sucked into the pipe. And bearing in mind, by this stage, he's 600 metres down the pipe from where he got washed in. And he'd been there for about 45 minutes in the pitch dark, hanging on to this piece of wood that had been jammed across the pipe, just screaming for his life. And he was just beyond comprehension. There was no way to communicate with him at that point. And then I just kept crawling and crawling and crawling. And I thought, I was terrified I wasn't going to get there. I started to pray to God to help me to get there. And I've finally been able to calm him down enough to communicate. And I said, mate, just come to me. And because of the junction of the pipe, he's able to get into the pipe that I was in, and the water just washed him straight in my arms. And I remember just grabbing him. I mean, he wasn't going to get past me because I was blocking the drain again.
Yeah.
And I remember grabbing him in my arms, and I just said, you say thank you, God. Even though I'm not religiously or Maxie, but I'm a very spiritual person. I just said, just say thank you, God. And he said, oh, thank you, God. And he started bawling his eyes out, and I started to bawl my eyes out. Just, the emotion of having this kid in my arms after all he'd been through, after all Gavin and I'd been through and Michael had been through, it was just extraordinary. I had this kid in my arms, and I couldn't believe it. I thought, wow, he's alive. So somehow I sort of pushed him under my arm, and he then got washed down to where Michael was. And Michael quickly assessed him, and then he swam him back to the manhole. And Michael got out first, and he's in his full ambo kit, and he's saturated naturally. And then all the SES around, and police and the crowds. And his mum was there, and they reached down, and Michael literally pulls this kid out of the drain like a drowned rat, and then sort of carries him over and puts him on the gurney. They wrap him up in an emergency blanket, and his mum just collapses on top of him. Meanwhile, I'm sort of making my way back to the manhole to come out. And I only saw this on the TV footage later. And then I crawled out, back up the manhole. I don't know where Gav was. I just got us back into the car as quickly as I could. And I remember a journalist coming over and talking to me, but what she said, what I said, I got no idea, because my brain's, it's frazzled by this stage. And I remember being driven back to the police station in the police car, and I'm just quietly sobbing to myself. And then Gav was in the car, he was in the back seat. And then we pull up at the police station, and my wife was also a detective. She was in her office looking across, saw the car pulled up, but she'd had her radio turned off, so she had no idea what had been going on. And she saw Gav get out holding his gun and handcuffs just in his suit pants, clearly saturated. Then I get out in my boxer shorts holding my gun and handcuffs, and I've got blood stuff all over my back where it been cut from the pipe. And Deb's going, what in the hell have these two been doing? But by the time she got across to the crime scene unit where we were, I was in the bottom of the shower, just curled up in a ball, just sobbing and sobbing and sobbing. And she just turned the shower off and just grabbed me, and she had no idea. Just no idea what was going on. Obviously, she found out in due course. And then I just wanted to get home and have a really good shower and get clean. And And then we went straight up to the hospital to see the little boy to make sure he was okay, and we spoke to his mum, and he was just shattered psychologically, physically. He was absolutely shattered. And we spoke to his mum, and she was just so grateful, and we have a really solid relationship all these years later. And then it was back to work, and the media's there when he do interviews, and then we went out for lunch and had a few beers, and didn't do much work that afternoon. Went back to the pub, absolutely hammered that night.
Wow!
What a story, Allan.
What a story.
So,
what kind of period of time was that over? Like an hour, or what kind of, from you first being on scene to actually getting him out?
Look, I think I'd estimate probably an hour and a half. I'd say, Lee. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty well. They can correlate from the time that the call came through to the police to the time we got him out. They can work out how long he was down the drain for, and it was at least 45 minutes, if not longer. So by the time we got organised, and it was a very, very intense period of time that I do remember.
Yeah.
The fact that you can recollect it so vividly just, shows how, what a moment in, like a timestamp in your life it was, and like how amazing that you've got a relationship with the boy now.
Yeah,
so you say he was 11?
Yeah, he was 11, and he was very adversely affected in relation to mental ill health issues and the troubles that they caused him, and ended up, it's on record, he got into a lot of trouble with the police and spent a lot of time in boys' homes and things, and I was continually writing references for him to try and explain why, etc., etc. After that rescue, I'd been involved in some pretty serious stuff before then, and my mental health completely deteriorated. So I was trying to do my best for him, but I never felt like I could do enough for him. But I was struggling to stay alive myself at that point, so I could only do the best I could. But from that, we did develop a bond, and that bond has never been broken. The same with his family, and to go to his wedding was a very, very, very special occasion.
It would have been a few tears there for sure.
I say he was such a brave little boy to hang on to that timber the way he did, because I know, like, I'm 6'2" and 100 kilos, and that water just washed me like a leaf. And for this little boy to have that power of water trying to tear him away from that, what he was holding on to, it was just phenomenal courage and determination to live. And for me, such an inspiration, that just desire that he's never going to give up was simply extraordinary.
What a story, mate. What a story.
Incredible. Incredible. You won't realise, Allan, just before you go on to the next question, we've got the storm water pipe story in book 2, in the book series, and we put in the storm water pipe story. And we've done a video, haven't we, at a storm water pipe. And absolutely, that's just taken on a whole new meaning for me. So yes, okay.
Yeah, so
just need to take one pause.
Yeah, one pause. You'll be back. So Lee, what a story. I know I've heard that story a few times, but I've never heard it in depth like that, and just visualizing what would have been going through Al's head. I would try to put myself in that situation as a firefighter, and you do take risks and you do try and do your best and help, but gee, that would have been scary. Knowing how much water, how dark, how cold, it's just an absolute...
Yeah, and the distance as well. I read the story this morning I think it's on Allan's website. I found it on Allan's website, and I read the story this morning, and I think like being 80 metres down the pipe, and then the little fella being so many 100 metres from where he started.
600
and
meters.
You know what?
It's a long way.
That's like, and when we did the he was, obviously 11 years old with his two mates. And, when we did when I did the speech in February, they're not out there on their own. They're in a pack.
No, they're in a
It's
pack.
that age that's why we go concentrate on 10, 11-year-old boys.
And definitely we can kind of shine a bit of light on our story in your cohort speeches, because, talking to someone that's actually done it and, the brilliant story, and then, receiving the amazing award, which was highly deserved. But yeah, hats off. And we're rolling to the next question.
Is this me or is it you, Maxie?
It's you, Lee. Sorry.
It's me. Are we on? Okay, so we're on number 4. Okay, so I am not surprised that you're awarded the Cross of Valour for that story, Allan. So one of only 5 recipients. How's that distinction impacted your life and career?
Look, I was incredibly humbled to be notified that I was being considered for the award. I was insistent that Gavin receive the same award because, in my belief, Gavin was responsible for saving my life, helping save the little boy's life. But it was adjudicated that Gav would receive Australia's second highest bravery award, the Star of Courage. And I've always felt as though Gav should have received the same as me, and I will always believe that. But he is obviously very, very proud of his involvement and his achievements and his awards. And Michael Maher received Australia's third highest, the Bravery Medal, for what he did, which is great acknowledgement of what Mike did. So the reality is that once you receive the award, it opens up whole new opportunities, experiences, and that has been phenomenal. I think for me, it was some acknowledgement of what I went through, what the impact of what the rescue did. I'll be really honest, I feel very uncomfortable about it in front of you guys, the lifeguards, and you as a first responder. That's why I don't talk about it when I do the training with you guys, because I see how many lives you guys save every season and through your careers, and I know how many times you guys put your lives on the line and stuff. So I'm very respectful of all of you. So that's why I don't talk about it.
I must say, Al,
but the reality
is, I was just going to. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, mate. But when you just were putting your phone on charge, I was just talking to Lee about I'm just trying to put myself in that situation and just going how scary and how brave and how courageous it was. And mate, I know you feel a little bit weird talking about it, but I reckon a lot of the guys will get a lot of fire in the belly and a lot of they will be so proud to hear that story. I've heard the first time I've heard it in depth. I knew about it, but you've never actually spoken like this on the podcast about it. And I'm just in awe of your actions that day. And as a first responder, I'm thinking, what would I do in that situation? And yeah, man, you went above and beyond, and you should be very proud of that. So never feel that, a room full of 30 blokes that have been doing it for a long time, put that aside. We would love to hear you talk about that story, because it does inspire not just us as first responders, but Lee and people listening to this podcast and people that are going to hear this story in time. So you should be very proud.
Thanks, mate. Thank you. But it has.
I knew you were going to say humble. Sorry, Allan, I interrupted them.
That's okay. But yeah, look, things like getting to build relationships with various state governors, the Governor Generals, and go to all these amazing events. And I remember when I was at the Queen's funeral, I'm sitting in Westminster Abbey, and I'm going, wow, remember that time back then?
Yes.
And here you are now. Yeah. So it's been a real journey, but I'm very grateful for the opportunities that it has presented to me by receiving the award, and it's something that it is incredibly special to have.
And you know what, Alan? What I will say is you've took that award, and now what you're doing is giving back, and you doing things to look after other people, first responders, with the operational readiness and things like that. And that's the measure of the man that you are, and why you should have it. I haven't noticed one bit yet that you're sitting around, sitting there admiring your award every day with a cup of tea. You have taken that platform and now you're giving back, which is why someone like you has an award like that.
Oh, thank you. And that's... Sorry, mate.
No, sorry, Al. Go, mate, go.
Yeah, you're very, very right, Lee. The reality that the award has opened up doors to help me deliver the training programs and help educate people about why their mental health can deteriorate and the work that they do, why it has an impact. Yeah, building that relationship with Dave and working with Dave. I mean, for me, it's the perfect combination of lived experience and science that people can really relate to and helps them understand. So certainly I don't believe that if I didn't have that award, I don't believe I would be in the position that I have been and currently in to help people the way that we are able to help them.
Awesome. And that rolls us into the next question perfectly. You've held significant roles in mental health advocacy, including as a Deputy Commissioner of the Mental Health Commission of New South Wales. What inspired you to transition into this field after policing?
I think that the first foray, as I said, as a Beyond Blue ambassador, that allowed me to become aware of how many people have mental ill health in our society and how many people are impacted by their work and the like. And it also made me realise that there's such a focus on postvention, trying to help people after they're unwell, which I totally respect and totally agree with the need to. But I also thought, well, why aren't we helping people to stay well and not become mentally unwell in the first instance? Why aren't we doing that? And I think through my work with first responders, AMBOs and fireys, the then Commissioner of the Mental Health Commission of New South Wales, John Fenley, he saw I had a very strong first response connection, and he invited me to become a Deputy Commissioner at the Mental Health Commission, which I was very, very proud to take on. And as fate happens, one of the other Deputy Commissioners is an eminent psychiatrist, Dr. Martin Cohen. And I explained to Martin, I said, I accept the diagnosis that I had, all this stuff, but I said, I can't understand why I became so mentally unwell before these things happened. And so that was Martin who explained the why factor to me, why people become chronically stressed and burnt out. And I then looked at my own life and I compared those periods of my life and go, yep, there. I could almost draw a timeline as to the decline in my mental health. So Martin explained, he said, particularly for first responders and other people, if you're chronically stressed or burned out, you're very vulnerable to the development or the impact of trauma-related mental illnesses. So he said, essentially, if you can help people not become burnt out, you've got a big chance of reducing mental ill health across the country, basically. So that became then my fire in the belly as to, okay, let's educate, and let's share the focus to prevention proactivity along with postvention and support. And that's been my goal since I started at the Commission.
Awesome.
Wow, that's incredible. And you know what? That's like in a very strange kind of parallel, really. That's what we are trying to do with Live, Learn, Survive, with bizarrely like those 10-year-olds that, you had to rescue. Like when we go to schools, Maxie will talk to them about, certain life skills that just build a bit of resilience so that they can cope with, because, kids see this perfect, they're online, which is just a hideous place for young kids. And they see everyone living out their so-called perfect life. And, the reality is there is no perfect life. And Maxie will say, we would say if there was a perfect world, Maxie wouldn't have a job. those lifeguards would not be needed on the beach. Life, things go wrong, and it's knowing how to, even simple things with kids at 11-year-olds, if they can take that situation, cope with it, have certain skills and then they realize, what, this happened, I'm okay, we go again tomorrow.
Yeah.
That might save the 15-year-old having anxiety of the 20-year-old having 25-year-old, and as they grow, the problem grows, or the difficulties grow.
Guys, the potential for you guys, not only to the work you're doing now, but the cohort that you're educating, that's where a lot of focus needs to be placed. So the opportunities that you are creating through your education programs, I see you could expand that to help them understand so much more about the impacts on their lives that they can learn from, to help them establish endurance and resilience as they progress through their lives. So you guys are perfectly poised to make a massive impact on top of, no doubt, the massive impacts you're already making. So
that's why we have we have a newish logo we started this year. It's got water, fire, and the cross for first aid, but right at the very top is a heart, and the heart is look after yourself, because if you look after yourself, you can look after it's self-care, you can look after everyone else.
So important. And that's where I think we as a society are failing, that we are failing to educate them at the earliest possible age. You guys 100%. Are trying to do your best, and doing an extraordinary job. And this is where we need to really start to ramp it up.
Yeah. No,
absolutely.
Sure, you're up, Lee?
Yeah, look, we may have already answered this, but I was just like, a moment in your career that particularly transformative or shifted your perspective on life. You may have covered it, or there may be one that you want to throw in there, Allan.
Yeah, unfortunately, my memory is still very strongly.
That's good.
Yeah, and thank you for giving me a rough breakdown of what things I might be asked today, because it does help me to think about stuff, which is really important, because I really respect what you guys are doing and the power of your podcast and stuff. So there was a lot to think about in relation to this question, and there were so many examples, but I thought the key element of about life, and I remember I'd only been in the job for just a few weeks. I was still 19, really raw. I was working with the senior constable, Ian Lindsay, who was a great mentor and teacher, very quiet, calm guy, and we got a job over the radio to attend an address at King's Cross regarding a deceased. And I had already had some experiences with deceased in my early career with the police. So it wasn't like I was going to go and see my first deceased person. But we got to this apartment. It was a really well-maintained, immaculate apartment. And a young man had taken his own life. He had, back in those days, the gas used for cooking was toxic. And he took his own life. And I remember walking into the kitchen, and he was laying there with his head on a pillow. And I read his note to his family. And I'd never known of anyone to take their own lives. And I thought, how can this young man want to do that? Why would you want to do that? And I think that was one of the most defining moments in my police career and in my life, that somebody didn't want to live anymore. And it was so bizarre to the way I had lived my life, my family had lived their life. It was so foreign, but he was so at peace, and it was very confusing. And I look back on that as probably the most defining moment to answer your question. And then, as you understand, Maxie, you understand the difference between life and death is one breath, 1 second. That's it.
Yeah.
And that was that's something that is obviously remained in my memory. Didn't have a negative impact on me per se. It just made me feel very, very sad that somebody's life could reach a point where they didn't want to live anymore.
Yeah. And unfortunately, in this
Yeah.
day and world, it's becoming more and more common. And the longer that I'm in the fireys, we tend to go to them a lot, unfortunately. And
I
that,
remember, Maxie, sorry, good.
yeah, I was just going to say, if anyone that's listening to this that is struggling or needs to go seek help, there are services out there, and we'll put some stuff at the end of this podcast in the Spotify bio, so people can reach out if they need it, because it's so important.
Absolutely, it's so important. And even on our Instagram, we have all the help buttons for all around the world for kids helpline. Because people do need someone to talk to, and there is always someone on the end of the phone somewhere. And we often say we're not experts, but we know the people that are. Find the experts and go and find the people they are. And that very much reminds me, Maxie, of your very first day down at the beach that you've talked about before.
Yeah, Bronte.
Similar situation. First day down at the beach. By memory, were you with Box or someone, Kerbox or someone like that?
I was 16
and you
years
said,
old.
yeah, and you said, I just want to help people. And and I think that's an absolutely defining day in your career as well.
Yeah, so very similar. Allan, probably not aware of the story, but we unfortunately had someone jump off Bronte Point, which was literally my first day as a lifeguard at Bronte Beach, my first day. And I remember getting the binos out and looking, seeing, I still remember the coloured shirt, it was a red shirt floating out in the water. And one of the boys paddled out and said, Max, you stay here, just get the gear, we'll bring him in. And we brought him in. I remember the guys starting to work on him. And Kerbox looked at me as he was pumping away on the chest, and he looks at me straight in the eye. He goes, "Is this your first one?" I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Jump on." So he got me to get on the chest pretty quickly. So I remember doing a couple of rounds of CPR on the person. The Toll ambulance chopper landed in the park at Bronte, and I still remember to this day. He was clinically dead. He was assistedly when he was in the water from the impact. But the compressions that we did and using the defib, we managed to get a heart rate back, pulse back, and then they managed to put him on life support, and they donated a few of his organs that were still not damaged from the fall or from what had happened. So even though he ended up passing, it was a successful resus on our part, getting a rate back. I remember thinking to myself, well, this could be an easily crossroads. I left school in year 10. I know that there were kids in my year still studying for their, school exams, because it was around October, November of 2007. And I remember thinking, like, some of my mates or the kids that I went to school with have no idea this is the real world and this is what needs to be done. And I remember thinking to myself and talking to Kerbox and a few of the lifeguards there going, I want to help people. And I've always kind of remembered that story. And Lee brought it up. But it's very similar to yours, Al. I think they stick with you. It hasn't affected me. I don't think about it every day, but I do think about that time, and I reckon that would have been a definite crossroads of going down the path that I've done. And yeah, so adding on to that, a bit more of an upbeat, bit more of an upbeat.
Let's liven it up a little. Yes, exactly.
Who inspired you growing up?
Yeah, that's. I had a deep love for my uncle, and yeah, he was just a very wonderful, kind, caring man. I think as a child, the person I was quite in awe of was my grandfather. Granddad, he was in the Light Horse Brigade in the First World War, and obviously as a young child, you don't know about war. You just in real terms, you read historical books and things, and you have some understanding. But I remember my granddad was a very quiet, deliberate man who everybody looked up to. He could hold court with anybody. Everybody spoke about Jim Murray as being like a real man's man. He'd been to war and he's a successful grazier. And so I'd have to say that in my early years, say up until I was about 14, 15, my grandfather would be the one that inspired me the most.
You'd be if you're looking down and thinking how good, it's such a a nice thing to remember your grandparents. I lost my grandpa last year, and he was a big influence with me as well. Pop, he was an ex-paramedic, and back in those days, he was a volunteer paramedic at a mascot station, and they used to respond up to the old Redfern back in the 60s and late 50s, 60s, and early 70s. And he had some crazy stories. And the fact that my first fire station I got posted to was Redfern.
All right.
Yeah. So a little bit of a weird one there. But I would say my grandfather too. What about you, Lee?
I think family, like I also had an awesome granddad who, just different people that, my first boss was incredible, taught me how to lead people, was a really good boss, and, I think people, have influence on you, there'll be a teacher that believed in you and there'll be a few that didn't, that kind of thing. So, great answer, Alan. So I'm going to lump these couple together for you, Alan. Most stressful part of the journey so far, and you've had a lot of stress, but how do you deal with it? So what have you found the most stressful, and how have you been able to? Who looks after Alan?
I think that probably the most stressful was when I realised my mental health was declining, and I was starting to, what I believe was lose control and then ultimately become suicidal. That was without doubt the most stressful period. And obviously things happen from there. But what I do now, it's really important to me, Lee, that I want to be the living, breathing example of how I want the people that Dave and I train, the people that I train. I want to be somebody they go, you know what, Sparksy does the stuff that he's asking us to do. Yeah. And that's really important to me. And, I look after myself. I'm very conscious of my sleep quality, my fitness levels, my nutrition, my blood glucose levels, because I'm a pre-diabetic, my alcohol consumption, my knowledge I've gained about diaphragmatic breathing, how I implement that in my daily life. All these things are about being proactive, and not to say that there hasn't been other periods of trauma in my life. Of course, there has been in everybody's life, but knowing how to endure those periods has been very important. Because my belief is, if you can't endure it, you've got very little to be resilient with. So it's about how do you develop endurance? How do you maintain endurance? It's a bit like a marathon runner. They train and they endure that period, and then they have the capability to be resilient after, so they can get prepared to do another one. So that's the philosophy that I live by now. But it's all based on knowledge that I've gained over the years of being involved in the sector, working with people like Dave, working with people like Dr. Martin Cohen. It's learning from experts about the why factor and what you can do individually to manage those factors and control them and establish them and maintain them.
Yeah.
Great
answer. So for me, whilst I acknowledge the critical importance of having clinicians, etc., to help us understand and manage and build resilience and be able to keep going, it's so important that we focus on the things that we are in control of. And I think that's where we've made a difference with the lifeguards, Maxie, that we've given you the knowledge for you guys to develop the skills to enhance your professional and personal lives and endure those periods of high intensity, potentially traumatic incidents, significantly traumatic incidents. All these things we've helped you do, then you put that into practice. And that's been such a reward for Dave and I to know that the people we're training, the guys actually doing it. And when you hear, such as yourself, Maxie, and Hoppo and all the guys talk about the difference it's made to their professional lives and in turn their personal lives, that's when you go, oh, wow, this is so good. Yeah, it does. Awesome. It's just extraordinary. You need to have the same feeling, mate, when you do a successful rescue. All the stuff you put into being at that point in somebody's life, you're there because you're capable of doing it, and you do something successfully or to your best of your ability, and the emotion that must create for you would be so powerful.
Oh, it definitely is, mate. Definitely is. And
Brilliant answer.
it rolls straight into, again, the next question. What advice would you give to young professionals or people listening to this podcast entering high stress fields like policing, firefighting, or emergency services, or even just your general job that you're going for? What advice would you give them?
I would suggest that you learn as much as you possibly can about the physical and psychological impacts it may have on you, not to say it will, but may have on you as an individual, and understand why they would have an impact, how they have an impact, and what you can do to reduce the impact. So it's all about research, build up your knowledge base, and then understand it. For example, with the police, we talk about the changes that takes place in their lives once they leave the academy. And I'd say 99% of the answers people give, they go, shift work and sleep. And that's a big thing that, as you know, we focus on in our training is the importance of quality sleep, why we need to sleep, and the impacts upon us physically and psychologically if we don't get quality sleep. So we understand how all these things can impact you and what you need to do to do that. So it's researching, building up your knowledge, education, and putting that stuff into practice, and learning as you progress through your careers.
Great advice.
Because as we all go through life, every part of our life is impacted by various things along the way. But if we understand how they impact us, why they impact us, what we can do, we're better in a better position to manage when the hard times really smack us around the ears.
Brilliant.
Great answer.
Such good advice. So, Allan, what is next for you in terms of the work you're doing in mental health advocacy and other passions that you're pursuing? What's next for Allan?
Look, I would love to keep doing what I'm doing. I love working with Dave. He's a great mate. I have such respect for him as a professional. He's been a wonderful support for me. I've learned so much from Dave. He's really helped me unpack the why factor for so many things. And that's where I see the benefit of a good clinician can really, really make a difference to people's lives. It breaks my heart that it's so hard for people to gain access to good clinicians. There's all this stuff about, just speak up and go and get help. Well, I think that's very disrespectful to people who are mentally unwell, because speaking up is really, really challenging when you're mentally unwell. It's really hard to do it. And to get help is extremely difficult. And for many people, it's unaffordable, it's not available. So that's why I think it's so important we develop this proactive preventative approach.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, there isn't the desperate need for people when they reach that terrible point in their lives.
Yeah, I agree, because parents that can't get appointments for children for months.
Yeah, if they're lucky, it could. That's a reality, Lee, and
it's very expensive. Families can't necessarily, afford it.
Yeah.
It's hundreds of dollars an hour.
Yeah,
they probably don't know the options that are there to be able to provide help, and then trusting the person to tell the story to, because everyone's got a story and you need to connect with that person, because if you don't,
absolutely,
then it's just another person that you're telling the story to that that they A, probably don't care, or B, probably won't do anything about it, and C, maybe judge you. So yeah.
And people sometimes go to multiple different people till they find the person that they connect with. That's a really expensive exercise.
Of course it is, and it takes such a long time. So I think that and this is one of the great things that you guys are doing, is you're dealing with reality. Yeah. You're helping these kids deal with reality, what's in their lives at their moment, to give them knowledge and skills to help them progress through their lives. And you are being very proactive and preventative in the approach you take, which is fantastic. So let's deal with reality. Pardon my French, but let's cut the bullshit and address the issues that we know that need to be addressed. So for me, if I can continue doing this work, I would feel very blessed to do it. How long that will continue for, I don't know. Ultimately, as many clinicians say, they'd love it that they weren't needed anymore.
Yeah.
When that point will ever come, I don't know. Can we shift the focus? Can we change the focus? Can we make a difference? Of course we can. But it needs collaboration with like-minded people to do that.
Absolutely.
Mate,
Absolutely.
we kind of grazed over this, but we didn't actually ask the question. But best piece of advice you've been given? I know there's probably been a great advice or maybe a quote that you can share or something that kind of keeps you upbeat and positive.
It's not upbeat and positive, but it's one it stuck with me very early in my police career, Maxie. When I was starting my training as a detective, I worked with a really, really wonderful man who was also a really wonderful detective, highly experienced, incredibly courageous. And he said to me, Al, as a police officer, never be judge, jury, executioner. And I really thought about that. And it made me think about, well, what is your role as a police officer? What is your role as an investigator? What is your role as a detective? And ultimately, it is to find the truth. And it's so important that you look at what is the truth. And I think that was probably one of the things that stuck with me the most. That no matter what, always dig deep until you actually find the truth. And many years later, I used that philosophy in a very practical sense in regards to an investigation that I did where a man had been accused of a crime that clearly the evidence was that he had actually committed it. And at the start of the investigation, I started to have some doubts about it, and it caused me to start digging deeper and deeper and deeper. And ultimately, I realised, no, this man hadn't done this crime. He'd been set up for it. And eventually, we arrested and charged and convicted the person who had committed the crime. So it was just a wonderful carry on from the advice I'd been given many years before. No matter what, find the truth.
Find the truth.
Stand by your values.
I was just going to say it's refreshing to hear that that knowing that that is the primary role of a detective or people that are within policing is to find the truth. And I think sometimes people either forget that or they don't really necessarily understand that. But the fact that you kind of explain that quite well, my cousin's a detective out at Maroubra Police Station, and I'll pass on that knowledge to him because it's true. You're trying to find the truth, and you need to take all the stories, you need to take all the evidence, and you need to produce it. And then, if you uncover it all, hopefully the truth does always come out.
But I think that also applies to the work that you guys are doing, the work that I'm doing, the work that Dave's doing. We're establishing the truth, and we're dealing with reality, and that's so important. You're not giving false or shallow information to the kids that you're educating. You're giving them the truth.
Yes,
and something that's real and they can deal with and manage. If you give them the wrong information, or you gloss over it, or you don't focus on what is the truth, then not a lot of good can come out of it.
No, yeah, you're right.
That's what that one saying, which I said, don't be the judge, jury, and execution, means don't assume anything, don't make false assumptions, don't rely on just what you hear. You make sure you establish the truth first and foremost, and that I think we can apply that across so many aspects of our lives.
Brilliant. I think I love that. Find the truth. I've written it in big letters here, Alan. I really, really do love that. So with everything that you have on, how do you balance your Alan at home, the personal life, with the demands of everything else that you're doing, and public service, and what keeps you motivated, and how do you balance that?
The motivation comes from being with people, and talking to them, and certainly like with you and the guys, Maxie, when we talk to you after we deliver the training, the feedback we get, it's so positive, and we know we're making a difference.
Yeah.
And that's what keeps the fire in the belly. And the work I do with the cops, to be back involved with the police is so rewarding. So I've always, I believe, being a very positive, optimistic person, and that, how to say, that energy that I develop, it just carries over into the things I like to do. But certainly being around positive people, being engaged in positive activities. I still love to play rugby. I love being with the guys there. Still do some sailing and things. So I just think it's important to do the things that you like to do. I don't harm my body the way I used to, because I didn't have the knowledge about what I was doing, how I was harming it. So I'm very, very conscious about my own health, physically and psychologically, and be grateful for every day. That's very important.
I think the thing, like you just said, surround yourself with good people. Just if you find we always say, find the people that receive your energy, and I believe what you put out there comes back to you tenfold, and you suddenly have this incredible people around you that makes life just like fun and rewarding. And you say the feedback you get when you've spent time with the guys and how appreciated it is. I know when we get a great testimonial from a school, we're like, yes, I want to, we want that in 10 schools, it's, so I completely understand that completely.
I spend a fair bit of time over at Redfern at the National Centre for Indigenous Excellence at the boxing program we run for the kids. And the things I've learned about Indigenous culture and the power of the support they give to everybody. And a lot of it's just unspoken support, just being there.
Yeah.
And I've learned so much I think I've been there for about 11 years now. And it's just such a great example of good people caring, just genuinely caring for people.
Yeah.
The power of that is just phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal.
It's that community, and Maxie and I have said it so many times. We're losing that community. It's being lost because we're all online and on our phones. And when I first emigrated to Australia, one of my colleagues said to me, "Lee, you can be lonely in a crowded room." And we are in crowded rooms, and kids are in crowded rooms, and they're lonelier than ever. And we're losing that just simple, caring community. And, it's great that there's centres like that bring it back.
Yes, so importantly. Yep.
So important.
Mate, last two questions. What advice would you give to your 16-year-old self? So you got 16-year-old Allan sitting across from current Allan. What would you tell him?
Trust your gut.
I love that, Allan, because what do they say? Because your gut knows what your head hasn't worked out yet.
Yeah,
that feeling in your gut is just everything.
Yeah, gut feeling. It gets you.
I've not listened to my gut about 3 times in my life, and I should have. Is all I'll say. Absolutely. Trust your gut.
One, and finish
Brilliant.
it off.
Yes, so last thing, we have a playlist. We have a Live, Learn, Survive Spotify playlist, and everyone that's ever been a guest gives us their upbeat go-to song. You're about to go on that stage, Allan, to talk to the crowd. You're about to stand in front of all those lifeguards. What song gets you in the right, let's go take the day?
It's a song by a guy called Danny Vera. You probably have never heard of Danny. He's a Dutch singer, songwriter.
How do you spell the last name?
Vera.
Yep.
And my favourite song of Danny's is Roller Coaster.
Roller Coaster. Well, it is added to the Spotify Live, Learn, Survive playlist.
Yeah.
So we have in our in the playlist we have because we have the World Online sort of crew of people. We have a young girl, Sammy, in Amsterdam. So she may know of Danny Vera. We've got German songs in there. There's all sorts in there. So it's a little global playlist. And Danny Vera, roller coaster is like, that's life, isn't it? Life's a roller coaster.
That's what he sings about, the highs and lows of life.
Yeah,
but he's brilliant, and he sings predominantly in English. But I think once you hear his song, you'll be looking for a few more to add to your own private playlist as well.
Awesome.
For sure.
Well, mate, it's been
Alan, what
an
a chat.
absolute pleasure. You're a legend.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah, it's been a great chat.
Absolute privilege.
You should be very proud. Should be very proud of everything you've achieved and you continue to achieve. And I look forward to seeing you again next year, the lifeguards, and then also now that you met Lee, being a friend of Live, Learn, Survive, you're always welcome. And
yes.
I'd love to keep in touch, and then hopefully, one day we're up the stage where you're doing your mental health chat, and we're up there talking about our water safety, fire safety, and first aid initiative for kids, rubbing shoulders at Governor House, maybe. Who knows? Yeah,
we would love to talk to you a little bit more about what we're trying to bring in for kids as well, Alan. So you might regret now that we've. You might regret that I've got your phone number now. I'm so sorry. I'll apologise in advance.
Look forward to helping however I can, guys. Be unreal.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Alan. And I've just got one last question before we go. Yep. Where did you set sail from in England when you sailed back to Australia?
We left from the Isle of Wight.
Isle of Wight.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, we bought the boat at Hamble Point.
Mm-hmm.
And we spent a long time, 2 or 3 months around Hamble Point, Isle of Wight, down to Poole. But we actually left, the morning we left was from the Isle of Wight.
Yes.
We went around the bottom of the Isle of Wight and then headed across the Channel.
Yep.
With no idea about what we were going to do after we got to France.
Wow, that's awesome.
Well, I would love to talk to you another day about that journey, because that sounds like an adventure. But I just think you talk about life takes you in unexpected places and all the rest of this. Maxie and we went to England because very close to Poole. My godmother lives in Poole. Southbourne Surf Lifesaving Club invited Maxie to open their new clubhouse. And this crazy duo said, we'll come.
And that's what
started. That same week, that's how Live, Learn, Survive started. And that week, we also went to visit the lifeguards at Ryde on the Isle of Wight.
Okay.
There you go. That's just a beautiful way to end.
Yeah.
And that lifeguard service now, literally, what was it like that day that we went? Todd still keeps in touch with us, sends us videos and photos. What were there, 4 or 5 of them, Maxie? They barely had uniform. There's a photo, the shed had half a sign on it. And last year we got a beautiful photo of the full team. They've got new kit. They've got all the rest of it. And they said, we're growing from strength to strength. Never underestimate the seeds that you sown and the kindness you said by coming to visit.
Fantastic.
There you go. Isle of Wight. How do we can't finish any more perfect than that, team.
All right. Thanks again, Al. And we'll be in touch soon. Take care.
Yeah, hope everyone enjoys this chat, and we'll definitely put some buttons on the end of it and some links where people, if you need help, there'll be someone on the end of a phone for you. So we'll do that too. Thanks Alan. Take care. Have a great week, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.